Welcome back to our journey through the fascinating world of That Time I Got Reincarnated as a Slime's Light Novel. Let's continue from the last part, where we left.
Clayman's death stunned everyone when Laplace broke the news, leaving them in disbelief and shock. Footman refused to accept it, but Laplace's somber demeanor confirmed the truth. As Casalim reflected on Clayman's demise, the group realized their vulnerability and discussed their next steps. Laplace's casual demeanor irked Footman, leading to a brief altercation before Casalim intervened. The Magic-born acknowledged their loss but recognized the need for patience and strategic planning. They debated their options, eventually deciding to lay low and regroup, acknowledging the risks of hasty actions. Despite their setback, they remained determined to pursue their goals, relying on their intelligence network and political influence. The boy proposed a cautious approach, suggesting they bide their time and observe Rimuru's movements before plotting their revenge. Laplace welcomed the plan, relieved to avoid another risky mission, while Footman begrudgingly accepted the need for restraint. With their resolve renewed, they retreated from the spotlight, preparing for the day when they could strike back against Rimuru. Once settled on the name Octogram, Miseri and Rain, two maids in Guy Crimson's service, prepared a fancy meal for everyone. They wore red-maid outfits and cooked incredibly well. After the meeting, some stayed for dinner while others chatted in the lounge. Rimuru enjoyed the food and secretly gathered recipes. Later they discussed rebuilding the city and dealt with personal matters. Ramirez wanted to move to Rimuru's hometown, but he refused. At the feast he shared Tempest's brandy, fostering diplomacy. Afterward he returned to Tempest, pleased with their nation's stability. Then he found the citizens and soldiers organized and respectful, thanks to Veldora keeping them informed. Despite Veldora's mischief, Rimuru appreciated the updates. Then he went a hot spring for relax and listened to Diablo's report. As per for Diablo, he journeyed towards Farmus with Church Archbishop Rahim and Palace Sorcerer Raisin. His first act was to restore their health. Shine's brutal torture had rendered them into grotesque forms, akin to living slabs of meat. But Diablo's mastery over healing magic reversed the damage. As the wagons rolled on, Diablo sat calmly amidst the prisoners, contemplating their fate. Rahim and Raisin, grateful for their salvation, pleaded for the revival of their king, King Edmurus. Despite their fear, they beseeched Diablo with trembling voices, hoping for mercy. Diablo, amused by their loyalty, issued a cryptic warning, hinting at the consequences of disobedience. Yet, he agreed to their request with a chilling smile, his eyes betraying a darker intent. As the journey continued, Rahim and Raisin pledged their unwavering allegiance to Diablo, their words laced with desperation. Unbeknownst to them, Diablo's tempter skills subtly manipulated their minds, ensuring their loyalty. Ultimately, Diablo held their fate in his hands, his power and influence casting a shadow over their trembling forms. In the kingdom of Farmus, chaos erupted as the nobility gathered in shock to witness the horrifying state of their king, Edmurus. Found in the audience chambers atop his throne, the king's body had been reduced to a grotesque cube of flesh with his face buried within, leaving the assembled nobles in a state of panic and confusion. Amidst the turmoil, Raisin, disguised as Shogo, struggled to maintain composure as questions and accusations flew. Days later, Raisin, along with Archbishop Rahim, returned to the castle bearing news of defeat and despair. The sight of the transformed king prompted frantic attempts at healing magic, but all efforts proved futile. As the truth of their dire situation sank in, Raisin, guided by Diablo's plan, began to spin a tale of hope and salvation, offering a glimmer of reassurance amidst the overwhelming despair. In the throne room, Yom and his companions arrived with Mjurin, Grukasith, and Rommel, followed by Diablo, who seemed out of place in his fancy attire. Yom, despite trying to act like a nobleman, struggled with his street talk, which annoyed some of the ministers. Raisin, worried about the situation, intervened to explain that Yom's group had saved them and could help heal the king. The nobles were skeptical, but Raisin and Rahim vouched for them, recounting their encounter with Rimuru, who had calmed the storm dragon. The nobles realized their mistake in antagonizing Rimuru's nation and agreed to negotiate for peace. Diablo, representing Rimuru, restored the king's health with a potion and presented harsh conditions for peace, giving Farmus a week to respond. Despite objections, Diablo left, warning against any delay in their decision. After the departure of their leader, King Edmurus called for a meeting with all the nobles to discuss the looming threat. With just 3 days to gather everyone, time was tight. The king's attendants quickly got to work, preparing for the crucial session. Edmurus, tired but determined, gathered his closest ministers to discuss the situation. They knew they had to act fast to avoid disaster. The next day, they reconvened to review the situation. Edmaris explained the gravity of the threat, and his ministers listened intently. They debated fiercely, considering the options laid out before them. Some feared the consequences of defying the powerful enemy, while others worried about the nation's future. Edmaris felt the weight of his decisions, knowing that mistakes could have dire consequences. As the discussion continued, he realized that their only choice was to seek peace, even if it meant making difficult sacrifices. Back in the village, Diablo reported back with a smile, saying he had successfully intimidated the others with a certain object. Rimuru was shocked, wondering if Diablo had really shown them that thing. Just reflecting on the impact, Rimuru realized it was a move straight out of Demon Lord territory. They discussed the hefty reparations requested, which seemed astronomical in the context of the world's economy. Diablo explained his strategy, confident that Pharmus would comply with their demands. They also discussed triggering civil war within Pharmus and securing allies. Rimuru nodded, trusting Diablo's plans and leaving everything in his capable hands. Rimuru was briefed on the plans, and while checking the details, Haruna arrived with dessert. Veldora, engrossed in manga, joined them for the treat. Diablo offered Veldora a plate, which he gladly accepted with thanks. Rimuru noticed Diablo didn't take any, but Diablo assured him he had received his share earlier. Veldora's abrupt departure raised questions, but he explained he had important business. Rimuru intervened to ensure Veldora didn't disrupt anyone's work further. Diablo assured Rimuru that he had delegated his tasks and was committed to serving him. Rimuru considered attending the upcoming peace talks but trusted Diablo to handle them alone, feeling reassured about the situation. Everything unfolded just as Diablo had anticipated. At the parliamentary session, the king announced the defeat against the Storm Dragon and proposed accepting Tempest's conditions for peace, causing uproar among the nobles who deemed it madness to pay the demanded 10,000 stellars. Diablo understood their objections but knew the nobles lacked first-hand experience of the threat. As the debate intensified, some advocated for continuing the war, oblivious to Pharmus's weakened state. Amid the chaos, Edward challenged the king's decision, but ultimately the king chose to abdicate, nominating Edward as his successor. This decision brought temporary relief, but tensions remained high as Pharmus faced international scrutiny and internal power struggles. Despite the turmoil, Pharmus eventually signed an armistice and peace treaty with Tempest, acknowledging its strength and establishing a fragile peace. This outcome marked the realization of Rimuru's plan, setting the stage for future developments as Diablo had foreseen. The morning after Diablo's report, Shuna and Soai returned to town, with Shuna needing time to recover her magical strength before casting spatial motion. Soai, despite being able to use shadow motion, refrained from returning first out of respect for Shuna. Meanwhile, Hakuro was left to clean up the aftermath of the battle, a task he willingly undertook despite his inability to use spatial motion. Benimaru and the others returned later that evening, with Benimaru passing his command to his officers and leaving the battlefield. He explained that Gable remained at the battlefield, forming friendships and aiding in cleanup efforts alongside Midray. Benimaru also mentioned plans to house prisoners from Eurazania and Tempest temporarily, dividing them into brigades for various tasks. With Geld and Alvis's assistance, the prisoners would be resettled and put to work, easing the burden on Tempest proper. As Benimaru discussed the logistics, Rimuru couldn't help but marvel at his companions' growth, realizing they were becoming increasingly self-sufficient without needing his guidance. One evening, a few days after Benimaru's return, Rimuru's advisor, Diablo, entered the office carrying a black box. Diablo explained that the box contained proof of their peace agreement with Pharmus and part of the reparations. Rimuru felt a bit guilty for forgetting about the negotiations but was impressed by the amount of gold coins in the box, which amounted to over 10% of the world's supply. Diablo revealed that most of the coins were seized from Pharmus's former king, Edmaris. Diablo had orchestrated events to ensure that Edmaris's younger brother, Edward, would take the throne, anticipating potential conflicts and alliances. Rimuru decided to use the gold coins for future urban development and to support Yom's efforts in building a new nation. Diablo suggested sending Rayhiam, a former archbishop turned ally, to testify to the Western Holy Church about the situation in Pharmus. Rimuru agreed and planned to send a recorded message along with Rayhiam to gauge the church's reaction. Despite Rayhiam's journey to the church, they had yet to receive a response, leaving Rimuru satisfied with waiting to see how things unfolded. After the three lycanthropeers arrived, Rimuru noticed Gable wasn't among them as he stayed behind to supervise the magic-born prisoners. Rimuru had prepared to accept the large crowd, organizing assignments for them around town with the help of specialists. He considered establishing a technical school to provide year-round instruction. When Gable finally arrived, he handed Rimuru a message from Milim requesting help with teaching her followers how to cook. Gable explained that one member of the Dragon Faithful had discussed their tradition of not cooking food, prompting Rimuru to plan to give them the royal treatment to change their ways. Rimuru instructed Gable to return to his research in the cave and promised to discuss his reward later. With pride, Gable flew off, reminded of his leadership role in Tempest. A month after Walpurgis, things were bustling in town with all the new arrivals, and Rimuru finally saw Geld, who looked exhausted. Geld expressed his admiration for Rimuru's leadership, recounting his struggles in managing the new prisoners. Verbal instructions were ineffective with the diverse group, leading to frustration for Geld. Rimuru sympathized, recalling his own challenges in a previous office job. To ease Geld's burden, Rimuru invited him for a drink and listened to his concerns. The next day, Rimuru met with Hakuro, who had finished transferring leadership responsibilities. Hakuro shared information about elven ruins discovered in Clayman's territory, now classified as a state secret. Rimuru decided to investigate the ruins cautiously, suspecting they were the source of Clayman's wealth. In the main meeting hall, Rimuru addressed everyone from his specially crafted slime seat, announcing his promotion to Demon Lord. The crowd congratulated him enthusiastically, while some, like Rigard, were moved to tears. Shion expressed confidence in Rimuru's new era, while others, like Benimaru, raised concerns about Rimuru's expanded jurisdiction over the entire Forest of Jura region, including lands beyond the Great Amold River. Kaijin highlighted the significance of Rimuru's authority over the forest's resources, potentially affecting those who illegally harvested them. Shuna pointed out that failure to acknowledge Rimuru's authority could label one a rebel, prompting many to seek his protection. Gable anticipated a surge in visitors, including the Lizardmen, while Rimuru proposed a grand festival to introduce the town and celebrate his Demon Lord status, which received enthusiastic approval. Plans were quickly set in motion for the festival, with Rimuru eager to make a memorable public debut and showcase his friendly leadership style. Rimuru concluded the meeting, promising to finalize the festival plans later and then listen to reports from his main staff. He valued these regular updates, especially since Diablo often had a different perspective, helping him see things he might have missed. Rigard reported that merchant partners were returning to town, likely due to Fuse spreading the word about safety. Other nations seemed cautious about Rimuru's Demon Lord status, but there were no major moves yet. Elmija Elruth Alyan, the emperor of the Sorceress dynasty, expressed interest in formal relations with Tempest. Soai then briefed Rimuru on his investigations, including setting up a highway to Thalion and encountering the Tengu tribe in the Kusha Mountains. Soai recommended seeking advice from Frey regarding the Tengu, and Rimuru delegated the task to Benimaru, causing some playful banter among the group. Rimuru trusted Benimaru to handle the matter effectively, appreciating his reliability and leadership qualities. Rimuru inquired about any changes in the monster ecosystem, concerned about potential threats to the town and travelers along the highways. Soai reported that while he encountered a saber grizzly, he dealt with it safely, but Rimuru was surprised as the creature posed a significant danger. Gabe expressed concern about deploying inexperienced guards in such areas, prompting Rimuru to caution Soai against underestimating the danger. Rimuru acknowledged Gabe's improvement and emphasized the importance of not setting unrealistic standards. He encouraged a more inclusive approach to training, noting individual differences among team members. As they discussed potential solutions to the threat of new and dangerous monsters, Vestra proposed using anti-magic barriers over the highways, a suggestion met with enthusiasm by Kaijin. This presented a possible solution to the ongoing concern about monster attacks, providing a sense of relief to Rimuru and his team. Rimuru was surprised to learn about Kaijin and Vestra's invention of an automatic magic generator, which could maintain spells without human intervention. It seemed like a significant advancement over their previous projects. Rimuru admired their ingenuity and dedication, especially as they had collaborated with other skilled individuals like Gable and Kurobe. The device utilized magicules from the air to create barriers and even reduce magicule density in the environment. Rimuru was impressed by the potential benefits and versatility of the invention, envisioning its widespread use in enhancing safety and efficiency. However, their discussion was interrupted by Veldora's reckless enthusiasm to release his mystical energy, prompting Rimuru to remind him of the potential catastrophic consequences. Rimuru had just finished receiving briefings from Soai and other leaders when Geld raised his hand, seeking permission to address the group. Rimuru granted him the floor, curious about Geld's request. Geld expressed his desire to inform his fellow orcs about Rimuru's ascension to Demon Lord and recruit more supporters for their cause. Rimuru appreciated Geld's dedication but suggested that any new recruits should first complete their education in town. Geld initially proposed a more efficient approach by immediately putting new recruits to work, but Rimuru emphasized the importance of training and equality among all races, including the magic-born prisoners. Rimuru entrusted Geld with a significant construction project, presenting him with a blueprint for a monumental structure. Despite Geld's concerns about failure, Rimuru reassured him and encouraged him to view any challenges as valuable learning experiences. As the meeting concluded, Xian expressed jealousy over Geld receiving attention, but Rimuru reminded her of her own important role in protecting the town. Benimaru affirmed Xian's strength and urged her to prioritize Rimuru's safety in his absence. As the meeting wound down, Rimuru decided to hear an update from Diablo. Diablo shared news about worldwide trends similar to what Rigard and Soai had reported earlier. He also mentioned Yom, a man being groomed for kingship with Edmuris's help. Rimuru made a mental note to meet Edmuris soon. When Diablo mentioned preparations to deal with potential threats, Rimuru expressed concern about Rahim's delayed return from the Holy Church. Despite Rahim's safe arrival in Inglesia, he hadn't left the capital, raising suspicions. Diablo assured Rimuru that they were monitoring the situation closely. The discussion turned to potential conflicts with the Western Holy Church, with Benimaru advocating for resolving disputes peacefully. Shuna reminded Rimuru of previous attacks and hinted at a hidden orchestrator behind them. Rimuru speculated that Hinata might have been manipulated into attacking, considering her loyalty to Luminous. This led them to consider the involvement of a mysterious mastermind orchestrating events behind the scenes. As Rimuru discussed the complex situation with his advisors, they delved into the possibility of multiple players influencing events rather than just one mastermind. They considered Hinata's actions in light of her loyalty to Luminism and speculated on the motives behind various factions' actions. Rimuru emphasized the need to avoid unfounded assumptions and instructed his team to gather more information. Each member was assigned tasks related to investigating potential threats and monitoring merchants who might be profiting from conflicts. Rimuru's decisive leadership and delegation of responsibilities ensured that everyone was focused on their respective roles in navigating the uncertain political landscape. As the meeting concluded, Rimuru reflected on the continuity of challenges despite his newfound status as a demon lord. On that fateful day, Veldora, the storm dragon, was reborn, causing panic across the world. The Western Holy Church officially announced this news, adding to the chaos caused by the formation of the Octagram by the demon lords. As nations grappled with these changes, the church faced unprecedented unrest. Archbishop Rahim's sudden silence raised concerns about Tempest's invasion, prompting Hinata to plan a visit. However, she was ordered to guard the cathedral due to Veldora's emergence. This delay raised questions about who would benefit most from the situation. Hinata's unpreparedness to face Veldora could lead to defeat, but if she could devise a strategy to invade Tempest while Rimuru was absent, she could achieve her ultimate goal. However, success depended on anticipating Veldora's moves and Rimuru's reactions. Nonetheless, both sides managed to avert disaster for themselves, at least for the time being. In the radiant city of Lune, protected by a divine barrier, Hinata walked towards the main cathedral. The city was a utopia where everyone had a role and harmony prevailed. But despite its perfection, Hinata felt a sense of unease. She longed to create a peaceful society like Lubelius, where competition and conflict were absent. However, she couldn't shake her doubts, especially when comparing Lubelius to Inglesia. In Inglesia, children showed a competitive spirit, while in Lubelius they all wore the same serene smile, reflecting the fully managed society. Lubelius's political system resembled communism, with equality enforced by the papacy, representing the Holy Emperor. But Hinata knew the truth: the god ruling over Lubelius, Luminous, was actually the demon lord Luminous Valentine, her only adversary. Despite its flaws, Lubelius had served as an ideal for centuries, presenting a challenge to Hinata's aspirations for a peaceful world. In the presence of Luminous, everyone held equal value, like livestock tended to by a farmer. As vampires, Luminous and her kin didn't need to harm people for sustenance, they only required a bit of blood to survive. The nation operated under strict rules to maintain order, ensuring equality among all citizens. Hinata believed in Luminism's ideals of justice and equality, joining the church as a paladin. However, she found fault with her teacher's teachings and the Free Guild's approach, seeking her own path to power. Hinata's world was shattered when she discovered that the Holy Emperor, Louis, was actually a vampire conspiring with the demon lord Roy Valentine. In a desperate attempt to eliminate them, she faced mortal wounds but was saved by Luminous Valentine, who granted her a second chance through a trial. Hinata emerged from the trial as a divine sword, determined to maintain order and justice in the face of any threat, even if it meant challenging Luminous herself. Back the current timeline, as Hinata arrived at her destination, she met Louis, the Holy Emperor, who shared shocking news his brother Roy had died. Louis explained that Roy encountered an intruder the previous night who had escaped Hinata's grasp. Hinata, tasked with defending the Holy Lands, felt remorse for letting the intruder flee. Louis expressed concern about the impact of Roy's death on people's faith in their creed and discussed the threat posed by Rimuru. Despite personal issues with Rimuru, Hinata recognized the need to prioritize victory in the Tema War. As they awaited Luminous's return, they anticipated a conversation they never thought they'd have. Now at the Inner Cloister, a sacred mountain at the heart of the Holy Empire, Hinata found Luminous, who was annoyed by the events of the previous night. Hinata reported Roy's death, prompting Luminous's frustration. Despite Hinata's remorse for letting an intruder escape, Luminous reassured her, placing the blame on herself. They discussed the revived dragon Veldora and the new demon lord Rimuru, recognizing the challenges they posed. Luminous cautioned against underestimating Veldora's power and expressed concern over Rimuru's influence. Hinata vowed to defeat Veldora, but Luminous doubted her ability. They acknowledged the threat posed by Rimuru and debated how to handle him. Hinata reflected on her mistakes and realized the gravity of Rimuru's presence. Luminous and Louis strategized their response, opting for cautious observation rather than rash action. Hinata agreed to cooperate, concealing her reservations. A month flew by, and Hinata dedicated herself to her duties. She led her troops tirelessly, building defenses against the revived dragon Veldora while gathering intelligence personally. Now, she presided over the monthly conference of lubelius' two major groups, the Crusaders and the Master Rooks. Hinata, esteemed as the strongest knight, occupied the highest seat, with 6 Crusaders to her right and the ragtag group of 33 Master Rooks to her left. Each Crusader, including Renard, Arnaud, Bacchus, Letus, Gard, and Fritz, led 20 paladins, while the Master Rooks, including Sari, Grigori, and Glenda, were powerful individuals in their own right. Together, they were known as the 10 Great Saints, revered for their superhuman abilities. As Hinata entered, the meeting began promptly. Behind Hinata, Holy Emperor Louis observed the conference from his seat behind some bamboo blinds. However, before the proceedings could begin, Sara disrupted the meeting with accusations aimed at Hinata for failing to prevent Veldora's awakening and the birth of a new demon lord. Sar, once the leader of the anti-Hinata faction, challenged Hinata's leadership openly. Over the past month, both divisions, Crusaders and Master Rooks, had been busy on missions worldwide, gathering intelligence on various catastrophic events linked to Hinata's actions. The tension escalated quickly, with Sari's faction confronting Hinata's supporters. Hinata intervened, warning Sari of dire consequences if he continued to provoke her. Recognizing Hinata's strength, Sari reluctantly backed down. With the situation diffused, the meeting finally began, with reports from both factions detailing recent developments, including peaceful interactions with Rimuru's nation and uncertainties surrounding Veldora's whereabouts. Hinata noticed a distinct difference between the Paladins and the Temple Knights. While both had freedom to travel abroad, only the Paladins could issue orders to the Temple Knights. She understood that despite their differences, she needed to use both groups effectively to achieve her goals. Sar's report marked the end of the meeting, revealing troubling news from Farmus about a potential civil war brewing under the new king, Edward. Meanwhile, Blumen's trade with Rimuru's nation was flourishing, contrasting with the chaos in Farmus. Sar suspected Rimuru's involvement in the unrest, prompting Hinata to contemplate the situation. She observed Sar's loyalty despite their differences and noted Glenda's deceptive behavior, suspecting hidden motives. Hinata remained cautious, understanding the need to maintain discipline within her ranks. Arnaud mentioned rumors about Rimuru negotiating with Veldora, which seemed plausible given Veldora's calm behavior. Hinata confirmed receiving messages from Luminous, instructing them not to interfere with Rimuru. She emphasized the need for secrecy and forbade any actions against Rimuru, surprising the attendees. Sara argued against ignoring Rimuru's activities, but Hinata reminded them of the strength disparity between Rimuru and even the strongest humans. Despite their abilities, they couldn't match Rimuru, who had defeated powerful foes effortlessly. Hinata urged caution, acknowledging the risk but also expressing a desire to communicate with Rimuru. Her decision to consider reconciliation drew concern from others, but Hinata remained resolute, believing in the possibility of peaceful resolution despite the escalating tensions. There was a knock on the conference room door, and Hinata, expecting Reihiem, invited him in. Cardinal Nikolaus and a nervous Archbishop Reihiem entered, followed by an unexpected group, the 7 Days clergy. Hinata was surprised to see them, as they were rarely seen in public. The 7 Days were legendary figures, revered for their wisdom and training of future heroes. However, Hinata harbored resentment towards them for their neglect of duty in the past. Despite this, she remained composed as they exchanged greetings. Reihiem then recounted a harrowing encounter with Rimuru, describing the demon lord's devastating power and the death of thousands of knights. The room fell silent, realizing the magnitude of the threat Rimuru posed. Hinata, however, remained steadfast in her adherence to Luminous's directive to refrain from hostilities. Despite doubts raised by others, she insisted on following the missive without question, displaying unwavering resolve as the leader of the Crusaders and the Imperial Guard. Reihiem, holding a crystal ball, revealed a message from Rimuru to Hinata, sparking curiosity among the group. The message, a challenge to a duel, left Hinata pondering her response. While some urged for immediate action against Rimuru, others cautioned against provoking him further. Hinata's decision to accept the duel was met with concern from Nikolaus and the 7 Days clergy, who offered her a powerful weapon called the Dragon Buster. Despite their hidden motives, Hinata remained composed, acknowledging their advice while retaining her own judgment. As the clergy departed, Hinata dismissed the paladins' concerns and concluded the meeting, leaving them with their assigned task. Hinata woke up to the smell of coffee, finding Nikolaus preparing breakfast nearby. Despite his high position in Lubelius, Nikolaus showed a caring side towards Hinata, serving her breakfast with a smile. Hinata appreciated the gesture, especially amidst her busy schedule. As they ate, Nikolaus expressed concern about Hinata's upcoming task, but she reassured him that everything would be fine. She was confident in her abilities and had Luminous's guidance to rely on. Though uncertain of the outcome, Hinata faced the day with a hopeful outlook, smiling genuinely for the first time in a while. In the kingdom of Seltrazo, a meeting of the 5 elders was underway, discussing important matters that could change history. Gathered in a well-guarded room, they spoke about Hinata's discovery of their manipulation, the threat of the Western Holy Church, and the Empire's ambitions in the West. Granville Razo, the leader of the Razo family, led the discussion, while Damrata, a merchant dealing in weapons, revealed insights about the Empire's plans and the widespread use of pistols in his homeland. Damrata spoke casually about the widespread availability of pistols in the East. Granville, the leader of the Razo family, quickly steered the conversation towards cooperation with the Empire, emphasizing the need to work together in the face of looming threats. Despite Glenda's initial resistance, Granville's authority prevailed, and the elders agreed to focus on eliminating Hinata, whom they considered too powerful to be left unchecked. As they discussed their plans, Granville revealed insights into Damrata's true nature and his connections to an underground organization known as Cerberus. With Granville's guidance, the elders strategized to manipulate Rimuru into dealing with Hinata while they focused on their own objectives, aiming to maintain their influence and control over the Western nations. As the meeting concluded, Glenda left with determination, knowing that their actions were intended to further the Razo family's ambitions for domination. The completion of the highway to the Dwarven Kingdom brought relief, but Rimuru found himself overwhelmed by an increasing workload. Plans for a new highway to the sorceress dynasty of Thalion and the development of a city for Milim's people added to his already full plate. Amidst these tasks, Rimuru received alarming news from Soka Hinata Sakaguchi was on her way to confront him. Concerned, Rimuru canceled his plans and headed to his office to gather information. Soka reported Hinata's unaccompanied journey, but Toka later revealed that she was joined by 4 powerful paladins. Rimuru contemplated Hinata's intentions, wary of potential conflict. Meanwhile, Diablo delivered the distressing news of Reihiem's death and the escalating tensions with the Holy Church. Rimuru called for an emergency meeting to discuss the impending threat from Hinata, deciding to exclude Geld from the discussion due to his involvement in another project. Sawai briefed the staff on Hinata's approach with a team of powerful crusaders, highlighting the challenge of tracking them. Rimuru praised Sawai's intelligence-gathering skills, noting his ninja-like tactics. Diablo then shared concerning news about Reiam's death and the escalating tensions with the Holy Church. Shuna suggested seeking advice from Adelman, a former member of the church, which Rimuru approved. Adelman, despite being a white, possessed powerful magic and arrived promptly at the meeting. Rimuru considered assigning him more important tasks, despite his limitations as an undead. Adelman praised Rimuru excessively, which made the staff uncomfortable, prompting Shuna to intervene and redirect the conversation. Adelman, a former cardinal of the Holy Church, shared insights into the church's structure and history. He explained that lubelius was a religious state with the Holy Emperor as its official spokesperson, and the church initially focused on missionary work without a standing army. Over time, the Temple Knights were formed to protect luminous followers, and friction with foreign nations led to the creation of the Master Rooks, a powerful division loyal to the Holy Emperor. Adelman mentioned changes in the church's power dynamics, including the rise of the Crusaders under Hinata's leadership. He warned Rimuru about the 10 Great Saints, a group of powerful individuals aligned with the church. Despite Adelman's suggestion to reason with Hinata, Rimuru declined, recognizing the potential complications. Xian and Diablo, however, seemed supportive of the idea, much to Rimuru's frustration. After Adelman left, Rimuru needed to assign roles for their upcoming strategies. Rimuru decided to use Veldora as the last line of defense to assess their opponent's strength. Benimaru then outlined the assignments for Yome's reinforcements, showing his growing leadership skills. Rimuru felt relieved as Benimaru's capabilities surpassed Xian's arrogance. The reinforcement plan included various units led by Gabta, Benimaru, and Gabel, with Hakuro as the supreme commander. Rimuru assured Hakuro of backup support if needed. Ranga was also deployed with Gada, with a warning not to be reckless. Diablo then outlined their plans regarding the Pharmus invasion, expressing determination to find the real culprit behind Reiam's death. Despite Rimuru's initial hesitation, Diablo's resolve convinced him to proceed with the plan. Benimaru and Hakuro discussed their strategies for dealing with the new king's forces, focusing on minimizing casualties and preparing potions. Shin expressed confidence in the team's abilities, leaving Rimuru feeling somewhat sidelined but ultimately supportive. With everyone's roles assigned, the meeting concluded, and Rimuru could only wish them luck. Then Sawai suddenly interrupted the meeting with alarming news about 100 knights moving towards them. While debating their next move, they realized the knights might be targeting Hinata. Concerned about casualties, they strategized to avoid killing the knights while dealing with Hinata. Despite initial doubts, they considered sending Team Reborn, led by Xian, to engage the knights as a distraction. After some debate, Rimuru agreed to Xian's plan, with the condition to only act if talks failed. They prepared for potential conflict, hoping to resolve the situation peacefully but ready to defend themselves if necessary. Rimuru and the team now had Team Reborn assigned to delay the Crusaders and Team Kurenai providing emergency backup, totaling about 300 people against 100 paladins. Rimuru considered who among them was powerful enough to handle the 4 Saint-class paladins accompanying Hinata. After some evaluation, he narrowed down the options to Benimaru, Xian, and Sawai. However, Raphael warned about the possibility of an enlightened-level fighter among the paladins, urging caution. Rimuru decided to have Xian monitor the paladins and command both Team Reborn and Team Kurenai. Despite some debate, Sophia and Alvis of the 3 lycanthropeers insisted on joining the battle, offering their support to Rimuru. With the team assembled, Rimuru emphasized the importance of prioritizing the safety of their allies and remaining vigilant. Back to the Hinata and her group were on their way to Tempest, making decent progress despite the slow pace required due to the lack of replacement horses. She traveled light, carrying only essential gear like a sleeping bag filled with emergency rations and a pot. Along the journey, she rendezvoused with 4 of her paladin subordinates, who insisted on accompanying her despite her attempts to send them back. Despite the maintained road they chose, amenities like inns were scarce, leading to frequent nights of camping out in the cold. By the time they reached Blumund after 10 days, they were exhausted and in need of a warm place to rest for the night. As Hinata and her companions settled into their rented rooms and gathered in the dining hall, they marveled at the changes in the town. Despite the winter weather, the markets bustled with activity, offering a wide array of goods. Hinata noticed the diversity in clothing and the quality of weapons and armor, some of which seemed to be derived from monsters. The abundance of merchant stalls indicated the town's prosperity, likely influenced by Tempest. As they ordered food, Hinata introduced her companions to ramen, a dish unfamiliar to them but nostalgic for her. Despite initial struggles with chopsticks and the hot temperature of the noodles, they were captivated by the flavors. Hinata, enjoying the meal, cautioned them about overeating, leading to a humorous exchange about weight gain. The next morning, Hinata and her group resumed their journey, refreshed and ready for the challenges ahead. Navigating the roads into the forest of Jura proved surprisingly easy, thanks to a well-maintained highway that even surpassed the streets of Inglesia. They marveled at the lack of monsters and the presence of hobgoblin patrols ensuring safety. Along the way, they encountered friendly hobgoblins who warned them about highway rules, including the importance of using designated facilities and avoiding touching magical stones that powered barriers. The party was impressed by the level of organization and safety measures implemented by monsters. Hinata reflected on Yuki's words about Rimuru's nation-building efforts and realized the depth of his commitment to fostering peaceful coexistence. As they continued their journey, they encountered amenities like drinking fountains and inns, showcasing Rimuru's dedication to providing for travelers. Despite lingering doubts and anxieties, Hinata hoped for a peaceful resolution with Rimuru as their encounter drew nearer. Back to the village, Hinata's arrival was expected that evening, according to the latest report from Soai's team. She had been traveling for 2 weeks without using any magical means to hasten her journey. Rimuru thanked Soai for the intelligence, appreciating the importance of early information. Soai, who resembled a shadow and was praised for his efforts, suggested poisoning Hinata, but Rimuru vehemently rejected the idea, believing she was here to talk, not fight. However, the possibility of a diversion crossed their minds, especially as Hinata seemed unusually bold in her movements. Benimaru speculated about the motives of the 100 other paladins accompanying Hinata, and Soai warned about their movements fanning out around the town, leading to an intercepted battle with Shine. Rimuru acknowledged that Hinata had chosen to fight, and he prepared accordingly for the confrontation. Leaving the inn behind, Hinata and her group geared up for the day's journey, anticipating their arrival at Rimuru's capital by evening. Despite Hinata's instructions for peaceful interaction, the tension among them was palpable. Just as she was about to reassure her companions, an urgent magical message arrived from Cardinal Nicolaus Speltus, warning about an imminent danger referred to as the 7 days. Concerned and puzzled by the message, Hinata tried to communicate back but failed to establish a clear connection. She then reached out to Holy Emperor Louis, suspecting foul play, only to discover that the deployment of the 3 battle sieges was unauthorized. Feeling a sense of urgency, Hinata decided to return home immediately, but her attempts at magic were thwarted by an unknown force, leaving her with a foreboding feeling. With events unfolding rapidly, she raced towards the unfolding battle nearby, filled with unease about the escalating situation. Upon learning of Hinata's attempt to make contact, Rimuru decided to block her signal, believing it would disrupt her plans. As Hinata made a beeline for the battlefield, Rimuru and his allies acknowledged her tactics and prepared to confront her. Benimaru affirmed their commitment to follow through with their plan, while Rimuru used his Dominate Space ability to teleport to Shine's location. However, upon arrival, Rimuru was taken aback by the unexpected turn of events. Instead of struggling, Team Reborn was holding their ground against the Paladins, employing clever tactics and exploiting their immortality. Despite initial doubts, Rimuru observed as Team Reborn outmaneuvered the Paladins, showcasing their resilience and resourcefulness in battle. Even Gobzo's hesitant involvement was met with Shine's stern encouragement, highlighting the intensity of the situation. As the battle intensified, Rimuru and his allies marveled at Team Reborn's prowess, realizing the potential of having such formidable fighters in their ranks. However, amidst the chaos, Shine's abrupt departure left Rimuru puzzled, wondering about her next move. Hinata moved swiftly through the forest, her senses heightened by the elemental spirits guiding her path. Emerging into a clearing, she encountered 5 formidable magic-born individuals, their attention fixed on a distant battle where her fellow paladins faced imminent defeat. Suppressing her emotions, Hinata lamented the breakdown of negotiations, resigning to the reality of battle. Meanwhile, Rimuru observed calmly, assessing the opposing forces, which included 4 powerful magic-born allies and 2 intimidating Oni figures. Recognizing the gravity of the situation, Hinata understood the formidable threat they faced, particularly the red-haired Oni who exuded immense power. As tensions mounted, Hinata braced herself for a potential confrontation, secretly preparing for a one-on-one duel with Rimuru, hoping to spare her soldiers from harm. Observing Hinata standing calmly nearby, Rimuru felt a sense of resignation. They exchanged a few words, with Rimuru asserting his authority over the territory and Hinata expressing indifference toward the accusations. Rimuru accused Hinata of orchestrating Reihime's death to blame them, but Hinata appeared genuinely puzzled by the accusation. Despite Rimuru's demand for Hinata to cease hostilities, she hesitated, acknowledging that the battle might conclude before she could intervene. Meanwhile, tension rose as a knight questioned Rimuru's intentions, leading to a brief confrontation diffused by Benimaru. Subsequently, members from both sides paired off for battles, leaving only Rimuru and Hinata facing each other, preparing for their inevitable rematch. Renard, the vice-captain of the Crusader forces, was highly skilled both as a holy wizard and with a sword. Despite not being a paladin, his swordsmanship was admired, especially his finesse compared to Arnaud's brute force. Renard's mastery of magic and swordplay stemmed from his admiration for Hinata, whose strength he witnessed firsthand during a demon lord threat. Inspired by her, Renard dedicated himself to mastering the blade and excelled in magical arts, earning recognition in lubelius. However, doubts arose when the 7 Days clergy revealed Hinata's alleged involvement with the demon lord Valentine and later with Rimuru. Despite his trust in Hinata, Renard accepted the task to defeat Rimuru to prove her innocence, driven by his unwavering loyalty and determination to save her from any wrongdoing. As Renard ventured deeper into the forest of Jura, his suspicions about Hinata's betrayal solidified. The idea of the dragon Veldora being resurrected seemed implausible due to the lack of magical energy in the air, leading Renard to believe that Hinata might have betrayed Luminism. As he prepared to initiate a holy field, he and his companion guard were suddenly attacked by monsters, raising further doubts about Hinata's loyalty. Remembering the clergy's warning about Hinata's potential desperate actions, Renard ordered his troops to retaliate, sparking a fierce battle. Amidst the chaos, a powerful Oni named Shion emerged, posing a formidable threat. Renard recognized the urgency of the situation and directed his team to deploy a defensive barrier while assessing Shine's abilities. Despite Shine's attempts to intimidate them, Renard remained resolute in his determination to defend against her onslaught and uphold his faith in Luminous. As Shion realized her threats weren't getting anywhere, she decided to make an offer to Renard. Despite his refusal to negotiate with her, Shion insisted on explaining her intentions, claiming she didn't want to kill them but had to demonstrate her strength. Guard and the other paladins remained skeptical, but before they could react, Shion hurled a stone at Guard with incredible speed, causing significant damage. Shocked by Shion's power, Renard reluctantly agreed to hear her out. Shion proposed a challenge: they would unleash their strongest attack on her, and if she remained standing they would submit to her forces. Renard hesitated, unsure of Shion's true motives, but Guard was determined to fight. Despite Renard's attempt to stop him, Guard led the paladins in a powerful assault. Shion, using her skills, effortlessly countered their attack, leaving the paladins in awe of her abilities. With their confidence shattered, Renard ultimately decided to surrender to Shion, hoping for fair treatment for his forces. As Shion grinned triumphantly, Renard realized he had been manipulated by others into this situation, feeling remorse for his role in hindering Hinata's mission. Now all he could do was watch as Hinata and Rimuru prepared for battle, knowing he had unwittingly played a part in the unfolding conflict. Hinata was fortunate to meet Shizu, the only person she ever truly connected with, even if it was just for a short time. Learning Shizu's sword skills was a highlight for Hinata, but she left out a fear of rejection and losing the warmth she felt. Despite her longing for a peaceful world, Hinata struggled with the reality of her past actions and her mother's reaction to them. She found solace in the idea that coming to this world freed her mother from pain, allowing her to focus on her own path without worrying about the consequences of her past. Witnessing the selfless actions of paladins protecting children from a calamity-class monster inspired Hinata to become a paladin herself, using her power to atone for her past and protect humankind. Now, 10 years later, Hinata had found her purpose as a guardian of humanity. Hinata found herself growing bored with the repetitive battles against monsters as captain of the Crusaders, despite implementing measures that drastically reduced casualties. She reflected on her unlikely alliance with the demon Lord Valentine and the rationality behind it for maintaining peace. Now faced with a dire situation against Rimuru, she realized negotiation was no longer an option, and victory was imperative. Assessing Rimuru's strength with her unique skills, she was surprised to find him blocking her attempt to steal his skills, indicating his formidable power akin to Luminous Valentine. Equipping herself with Moonlight, a legendary blade, and Holy Spirit armor, she prepared for a showdown, her heart filled with determination to end the monotonous routine of her life with a decisive victory. Rimuru found himself facing Hinata's pointed sword, surprised that she still chose to engage in battle despite receiving his message. Reflecting on the power of Hinata's blade and his own preparation, Rimuru realized the disparity between their weapons. With his katana lacking compared to the one he had hoped to finish in time, Rimuru relied on his magic aura skill to cover his blade in dark, thundering flame for protection. As the battle commenced with ultra-high-speed exchanges, Rimuru struggled to keep up with Hinata's staggering sword speed, even with his heightened computational abilities. Despite exchanging blows, neither had landed a strike, leaving Rimuru puzzled by Hinata's capabilities. He noted her robotic precision in reading his sword's path and her relentless attacks searching for weaknesses, realizing she had held back in their previous encounter. Determined not to hold back either, Rimuru braced himself for the intense battle. Hinata observed Rimuru, realizing he wasn't holding back in their battle. She had hoped to quickly overpower him with her sword skills, honed over 10 years, but found him to be her equal. Understanding the limitations of the human body compared to monsters, Hinata pushed her mind to its limits with Measurer, analyzing Rimuru's attacks and planning her strategies meticulously. However, she faced setbacks as her main lifeline, Usurper, was blocked, leaving her to rely solely on her technical skills. Despite wielding a powerful sword granted by Luminous, Hinata struggled to land a decisive blow against Rimuru, whose mastery over the air and physical abilities allowed him to predict her every move. Recognizing Rimuru's lack of fighting experience, Hinata adapted her tactics, hoping to outmaneuver him and secure victory. He found himself in a tight spot as Hinata's sword began to accelerate, her skills shifting rapidly, making it difficult for him to keep up. Despite his heightened brain speed, Hinata's precision and expertise in combat made her a formidable opponent. Rimuru realized that she was reading his attacks effortlessly, leaving him vulnerable to her strikes. Despite his physical advantages, Hinata's technical prowess and strategic approach gave her the upper hand. As Rimuru struggled to evade her attacks, he sought assistance from Professor Raphael, who provided him with the skill predict future attack, allowing Rimuru to anticipate Hinata's moves and block her strikes effectively. With this newfound ability, Rimuru gained confidence and managed to outmaneuver Hinata. Hinata's intuition kicked in, warning her of the danger ahead if she continued along her current path. Despite her usual reliance on logic, she trusted this gut feeling and managed to avoid a fatal mistake. As the battle with Rimuru intensified, Hinata realized the extent of his growth and the challenge he posed. She knew that defeating him would require her to abandon any restraint and unleash a move she rarely showed in public, the dangerous Melt Slash. Hinata proposed a decisive strike to settle the battle, warning Rimuru of its danger but also ensuring that he would survive it. With her strength exhausted and the fate of humankind at stake, Hinata knew that she had to demonstrate the overwhelming difference in their abilities to make Rimuru admit defeat. Hinata's warning about her dangerous finishing move left Rimuru puzzled. Why would she give him advance notice if her intention was to defeat him? However, upon realizing that Hinata had no desire to kill him, Rimuru accepted the challenge with confidence. Despite their past misunderstandings, they agreed to settle their differences through this duel. Rimuru recalled their previous conversation, where he had proposed a peaceful discussion but had offered a duel as a fallback option due to Hinata's stubbornness. As they prepared for the decisive strike, Rimuru observed the aftermath of the battles around them, noting Benimaru's victory and Xian's impressive performance. As Hinata surveyed the scene, she noticed her tired comrades nearby, receiving better treatment than expected. It seemed prisoner abuse was strictly prohibited, which aligned with Rimuru's character. Reflecting on this, Hinata realized she should have trusted Rimuru from the start, prompting a sincere thought about building a new relationship. Suppressing her excitement, she began chanting a spell, showcasing it to Rimuru. The spell, Disintegration, gathered around her left hand, emitting a blinding light. She then imbued her moonlight sword with this mystical force, preparing for her ultimate move, Melt Slash. As Hinata advanced towards Rimuru, her entire body emitted a bright light, with particles shooting out of her. The sword she wielded had the power to dispel evil. Rimuru's senses were heightened, yet the speed of her attack seemed regular, indicating its extraordinary swiftness. Realizing the imminent danger, Rimuru sought guidance from Raphael, who suggested sacrificing his ultimate skill, Belzbuth, to counter the attack. Rimuru made the decision swiftly, relying on Raphael's calculation to activate Beelzebub at the precise moment of impact. The clash ensued, and though Rimuru survived, the attack depleted a significant portion of his magicules. As he lay on the ground, Hinata's laughter echoed, but Rimuru's senses were dulled due to the purification of magicules. Despite the victory, the situation remained unresolved, as an impending explosion threatened both Rimuru and Hinata. Hinata bravely shielded Rimuru as the explosion approached, and Rimuru watched helplessly as her body crumpled before him. In a hidden burial chamber, Luminous Valentine, the Queen of Nightmares, gazed lovingly at a casket containing a beautiful girl. Despite the casket's holy force being harmful to her, Luminous caressed it with blissful disregard for the bruises it left on her skin. Interrupted by Louis, she learned of Hinata's mission to defeat Rimuru, prompting her to prepare for action. Assisted by her servant Gunther, Luminous readied herself, showing her preference for manual dressing over magical transformations. Determined to intervene and protect Hinata, Luminous led Gunther and Louis, leaving her beloved girl in the casket behind, whispered her name, and closed the chamber, enveloping it in darkness with her magic barrier. Damrata the Gold, leader of the Cerberus Secret Society, returned to Pharmus after meeting the Five Elders, ensuring Earl Needle's trust with gifts. He arranged for his protege, Edmaris, to stay in Magam, anticipating conflict between Edward and Yom. Spreading rumors of Yom's collusion with the Old King, Damrata stoked tensions, leading Edward to deploy troops against Magam. With Yom reinforced, Damrata considered Hinata's potential demise, wary of her discovering his schemes. Despite Cerberus's orders to incite war, Damrata hesitated upon learning of a powerful demon aligned with Edmaris. Concerned about his survival, he decided to withdraw from Pharmus, leaving behind his demon hunters as a parting gift for Edward, while planning to meet with Rimuru to bolster his trade opportunities. As he prepared to depart, Damrata reflected on his instincts and the dangers he narrowly avoided. Edward, the newly crowned king of Pharmus, felt a surge of excitement as nobles pledged their support, bolstering his forces. Surprised by Yom's alliance with his brother Edmaris and Rimuru's support of Yom, Edward feared his plans might collapse. However, news of Hinata's mission to confront Rimuru, accompanied by the Crusader forces and Lubelius's heroes, lifted his spirits. Viewing them as a formidable alliance against Rimuru, Edward granted them passage and military authority through his lands. Though he had no desire to directly face Rimuru, Edward saw Hinata's victory as achievable with their combined might. A letter from Earl Needle of Magam requesting aid provided a convenient pretext for deploying his forces, despite his reluctance for full-scale war. Unaware of potential consequences, Edward issued the order to mobilize, unaware of the looming dangers ahead. Glenda found herself adjusting her battlefield tactics as the plan veered off course, a common occurrence in such situations. Despite the setback, she remained confident in her ability to adapt and make things work in her favor. The presence of numerous nations and journalists observing their movements indicated the significance of their actions. Although Rimuru's attention wasn't solely on Hinata as she had hoped, Glenda saw this as a strategic error on his part, as it spread his forces too thin. Damrata's departure from the country was unexpected, but he left behind a capable team of anti-demon experts with King Edward, providing a sense of reassurance. However, Glenda couldn't shake the feeling of unease, realizing that the situation could quickly escalate and the demon still posed a threat despite her optimistic outlook. Diablo, the menacing demon, let out a sinister laugh as he spread his bat-like wings, surveying the land below with a sense of impending doom. He sought revenge on those who had betrayed him, causing him shame in front of Rimuru, his beloved master. Despite never having experienced fear before, the thought of losing his duties filled him with dread. Diablo spotted Edward, the new king, among the forces below, along with other formidable individuals who could potentially challenge him. Diablo had received instructions from Rimuru not to harm anyone uninvolved, but those who had wronged him were fair game. Reporting his findings to Hakuro, Diablo prepared to confront Edward, aiming to capture him alive for negotiation leverage. As he approached, Edward's royal guard scrambled to protect their king, but Diablo remained calm, knowing his target was within reach. Diablo engaged in a tense exchange with Edward, who accused him of treason and presented manipulated evidence. Diablo, unfazed, silenced Edward and warned of dire consequences if they chose to defy him. Edward, succumbing to fear, ordered his soldiers to attack Diablo, triggering a confrontation that would escalate tensions further. Diablo, the formidable demon, found himself confronted by a group of hunters who dared to challenge him. Despite their bold words and coordinated tactics, Diablo remained unfazed. The hunters, armed with chains imbued with holy elements, attempted to restrain him, believing in their anti-demon strategies. However, Diablo's innate resistance to natural forces like electricity rendered their attack ineffective. Their confidence wavered as they realized their carefully planned assault was futile against Diablo's immense power. Even though the hunters had undergone rigorous training and conducted extensive research on demons, they were no match for Diablo's overwhelming strength. As they struggled to comprehend their failure, Diablo calmly explained his ability to evolve beyond their expectations, revealing the depth of his power and knowledge. Realizing the dire situation they were in, one hunter pleaded for mercy, willing to do anything to save his life. Used by the hunter's desperate plea, Diablo allowed him to escape, signaling the end of their futile resistance. The other hunters, shaken by their encounter with Diablo, followed suit, abandoning their futile attempts to defeat him. Despite their best efforts and preparations, they were no match for the might of the demon before them. As the hunters retreated in defeat, Diablo remained poised and confident, his superiority unquestionable. His encounter with the hunters served as a stark reminder of his dominance and the insignificance of those who dared to oppose him. With a casual wave of his hand, Diablo dismissed the hunters, leaving them to ponder their failure and the overwhelming power they had faced. In front of the tent, Sire faced off against Diablo with a defiant smile. Diablo, impressed by Sire's courage, engaged in conversation, revealing his name and status as a demon peer. Sire, a member of the Imperial Guard, felt humiliated by Diablo's dismissive attitude but remained composed. Despite his internal frustration, Sire believed Diablo to be no more than a regular archdemon and prepared to confront him. However, Diablo's revelation of his true power as a demon peer left Sire shaken and terrified. Sire's attempts to attack Diablo proved futile, and he was left to battle the demon alone after his companion Glenda fled. Despite his desperation, Sire held on to hope that his ally Grigori would return to aid him. As Grigori faced the chaotic battlefield, he found himself confronted by unexpected adversaries. Yom's mercenaries were locked in combat with Pharmas's forces, complicating Grigori's mission to hunt down the demon responsible for Archbishop Rahim's death. Amidst the turmoil, Ranga, a powerful magical beast, descended upon Grigori with lightning crackling from his fur. Grigori attempted to command his allies, but Ranga's onslaught disrupted their plans. Despite Grigori's efforts to defend himself, he was left battered and wounded by Ranga's relentless assault. Meanwhile, Gadba and Gable pursued Ranga, urging him to cease his rampage and return to their leader, Rimuru. Eventually, Ranga relented, leaving Grigori bruised and defeated but ultimately alive. With the aid of healing potions, Grigori recovered from his injuries, though his pride suffered a blow, earning him the moniker of the Canophobe Crusader in later years. Sire desperately hoped for Grigori's arrival, knowing that his own strength was waning against the overwhelming power of Diablo. Despite his best efforts to defend himself, Sire felt the end drawing near, realizing the futility of his struggle against the demon's might. His unique skill, all-rounder, which usually allowed him to adapt to opponents' techniques, proved ineffective against Diablo's unmatched prowess. Frustrated and exhausted, Sire could sense that Diablo wasn't even exerting himself fully yet, further highlighting the vast gap in their abilities. As Sire grappled with these thoughts, he suddenly felt the presence of the 7 Days clergy, offering their assistance against Diablo. However, before they could act, a massive fireball erupted, engulfing the entire area and throwing everything into chaos. With no time to spare, Sire warned those nearby to flee as the flames consumed everything in their path. A powerful force struck Hinata, causing her to cough up blood as she collapsed. Her companion rushed to her aid, trying to heal her wounds with a potion, only to find that her body resisted magic. It seemed only holy magic could help her, but their healing attempts were hindered by the interference of the 7 Days clergy, who appeared with malicious intent. As tensions rose, accusations flew and chaos ensued, the clergy revealed their true plan to eliminate everyone present and erase any evidence of their involvement in Archbishop Rahim's murder. With time running out and danger mounting, the situation became increasingly dire. However, just as it seemed all hope was lost, unexpected reinforcements arrived to turn the tide of battle and confront the clergy's deadly assault. After successfully using the absolute defense skill to protect himself from a deadly attack, Rimuru questioned his ultimate skill Raphael about why it hadn't been activated earlier. Raphael explained that absolute defense could sometimes be penetrated by spiritual particles, rendering it ineffective. Rimuru was frustrated by this explanation, but Raphael assured him that he had gathered enough information from previous battles to predict and defend against similar attacks in the future. Rimuru then realized that Raphael had purposely absorbed Hinata's sword during a previous encounter to analyze it and prepare for future threats. Despite his initial frustration, Rimuru appreciated Raphael's dedication to protecting him and acknowledged the value of their partnership. As they bantered back and forth, their entire conversation took place in the span of a single moment. The 3 days' clergy seemed utterly baffled and in disbelief at Rimuru's ability to withstand their powerful holy magic. Despite their protests, Rimuru and his allies Benimaru, Sawai, and Shion prepared to retaliate. Benimaru taunted the clergy with his black flames, while Shion threatened them with imminent death. Sawai remained silent, keeping a vigilant eye on the clergy's movements. Alvis and Sufia, the lycanthropeers, ensured the paladins stayed in check. However, just as Rimuru was about to put an end to the confrontation, a gate appeared and Valentine, the demon lord, emerged. The clergy immediately recognized her and kneeled before her, revealing her true identity as the god Luminous. Rimuru was stunned by this revelation, realizing the true power behind Valentine. Diablo couldn't contain his excitement as Rimuru gave him the go-ahead to deal with the opposition. He quickly set up a protective barrier to shield the journalists and everyone else from harm. The 7 days clergy, determined to eliminate Diablo, launched a powerful nuclear flame spell, but it was futile against him. They then resorted to Trinity Break, their ultimate attack, but Diablo intervened, negotiating with the press instead of engaging in combat. He convinced the journalists to report his innocence to the world in exchange for their safety. Meanwhile, King Edward, realizing his impending doom, tried to plead for his life, but Diablo was unmoved. He manipulated the situation to his advantage, ensuring Yom's ascension to the throne and Edward's demise. The clergy attempted to retaliate with their moment of despair spell, but Diablo countered with his tempting world skill, trapping them in a virtual reality where he had complete control. Despite their struggles, the clergy couldn't escape, and Diablo ultimately ended their existence with his end-of-the-world technique, fulfilling the promises made on the battlefield. When the demon lord Valentine, also known as Luminous, appeared, it was unexpected, but another figure arrived, Louis, the Holy Emperor, announcing Luminous's presence. The clergy knelt before her, fearing judgment. Luminous, instead of punishing them, used her power to heal Hinata. Rimuru, puzzled by the demon lord's use of holy energy, left it to Raphael to analyze later. Hinata woke up, engaging in a banter with Rimuru, who inadvertently offended her. Luminous restored Renard, earning praise from the troops. Meanwhile, Diablo informed Rimuru of completing his task. With Luminous dealing with the clergy, Rimuru decided not to interfere further, focusing on future relations. Luminous sentenced the clergy to death with a final act of mercy, ending their schemes swiftly and unexpectedly. Rimuru decided to lead Luminous, Louis, and Hinata back to town, feeling relieved that everything seemed settled. However, upon encountering Veldora, things took an unexpected turn. Veldora recognized Luminous as the demon lord he once battled, causing a stir among the onlookers. Luminous reacted angrily, but it was too late to hide her identity. The paladins were shocked, while Hinata and Louis remained composed. Rimuru found himself dealing with yet another of Veldora's antics, causing a bit of chaos. They had to restrain Luminous from attacking Veldora, marking another eventful encounter in their journey. Deep within the inner cloister, Gren, a member of the 7 days clergy, was anxiously waiting for his comrades to return from their mission. Their plan to eliminate Hinata hit a snag, prompting Gren to consider a change of strategy. As complications arose, Gren devised a plan to frame the demon for their actions and maintain their influence. However, unexpected interference from Cardinal Nikolaus threatened to unravel Gren's schemes. Nikolaus, a devoted follower of Hinata, uncovered Gren's manipulation and swiftly dealt with him, revealing his loyalty to Hinata above all else. In a cozy room illuminated by a crackling fire, Granville Razzo sat pondering in a sturdy chair. Frustration gnawed at him as he recalled his recent encounter with Cardinal Nikolaus, realizing the danger he narrowly escaped. His plans thwarted, he awaited Glenda's report on the failed mission. When she burst in, breathless and defeated, Granville learned of their inability to defeat the formidable foe they faced. Glenda's description of the opponent's strength only confirmed Granville's fears. Days later, news arrived of King Edward's downfall and Tempest's rising influence, signaling the failure of Granville's ambitions. Yet his granddaughter Maribel offered a glimmer of hope, warning of the true threat posed by the Demon Lord's economic strategies and urging Granville to take action. With renewed determination, Granville resolved to heed Maribel's counsel and ensure the Razo family's dominance in the face of adversity. After some effort, Rimuru managed to mend things with Luminous and resolve the conflict with Hinata. As a gesture of apology, they agreed to release a statement from the Western Holy Church affirming their harmlessness. The situation highlighted the challenges of understanding each other, but also served as a learning experience for both sides. Additionally, they decided to establish a non-aggression treaty with the Holy Empire of Lubelius, allowing each other to operate without interference. Despite some personal issues involving Voldora, Rimuru remained confident in their ability to maintain peace. Sacrificing their friendship with Voldora to appease Luminous's anger, Rimuru reflected on the necessity of such sacrifices in growing up. With these matters resolved, they awaited Yon's ascension to the throne and looked forward to being formally accepted by the Western nations.
That's it for today, guys, and thanks for watching the video. Stay tuned for next chapter. Until then, goodbye.